you searching for fulfillment? Discover true happiness. Stay tuned to Shalom World.
Do you have men in your life that you can share deeply with? Do you have someone in your life who has permission to ask you absolutely any question? Do you have a person with whom you can share your deepest struggles? And I mean all your deepest struggles. If you answered no to any of those questions, then this is an episode for you. Welcome to Real Men. Sexual integrity is not something you achieve, it is something you grow in. Today's episode on accountability and brotherhood is key to any man that wants to live a life of sexual integrity. It's very rare for me to meet a man who has broken free from unwanted sexual patterns in their life without a strong element of accountability. This is really difficult though. We don't just naturally develop deep, sharing, vulnerable relationships. We have to make a choice. And we have to make it happen. What is an authentic relationship to you guys? What does it mean to be an authentic man in authentic relationships with others?
To me, it's just to be honest. To be honest. So it is to share, to be honest.
Right.
For me, it's I had to learn what authentic relationships were. I had to learn what a good masculine relationship was, because I didn't have good examples or experiences of that when I was younger. I had to learn that as a young adult and as an adult. And for me, I would definitely have to agree. Honesty, being okay to be who you are, but calling you on to something greater at the same time, for me has been the biggest thing.
Great. What about you, Paulie?
Yeah, mine's vulnerability. I think being authentic man and being vulnerable, I find that really a real strength. Like, I see that as a real strength in masculinity. So, yeah.
I think it's being transparent and also having a mate that you can be vulnerable with, that you can be honest with, and yeah, just for me also becoming a Christian, giving my life to the Lord. There had to be a new man, a man of integrity. You know, that became a new word for me, was someone of integrity. I didn't live a very integrous life before I came to Christ. Yeah.
I was the same, actually, just on that. Like, I just lived, like, I was ashamed. Like, I lived in a lot of shame just because I was like, I guess the thought was people don't know the real Paul. And now I think the freedom comes with just being authentic and being vulnerable. Like, the freedom comes with that.
Yeah. So what is an authentic masculine relationship? Well, from what we've just heard, I think it is dependable, it is vulnerable, and it is honest. I think people who struggle to share are going to be the ones who struggle the most with unwanted sexual behaviours and mental health and things like that. As men, we need to find a way to talk. As men, we need to learn to pray together. In James 5:16, it says we need to pray together and confess to one another. In Hebrews 10:25, it says, let us not neglect meeting and encouraging one another. So the pillars for authentic masculine relationships: meeting, encouraging, confessing, and praying together. Brotherhood is such a key part of the masculine journey, such a key part to have relationship success in all fields. What are your thoughts on the importance of brotherhood?
I think for me growing up, it was something that was a bit remote. And like a lot of other guys, I related much more easily to women than I related to men. But certainly over the last 40 years or so, I've taken that journey, and it's been a really fruitful journey, and have accompanied many young men who've taken that journey as well. And I just think it is amazingly transformational.
Yeah, and in my journey, in the middle of my life, I lived as a solo man. I lived as a guy who did it all for myself. I was able to do it, relied on my own strength and my own power, and ran into the inadequacy of me. And where I found my life was in small groups of men gathering, sharing vulnerably. And I belong to a small group of men. We call each other brothers in the process. In fact, these groups of men, and Shane's one of the journeymen that I've been with, and you as well, Paul. These groups of men have been the guys that are better brothers to me than just my natural brothers. And vulnerability in the process, so exposing who you are, and the journey towards manhood really begins in that process.
I think one of the prizes as well that we gain out of brotherhood and fellowship is when we're known in our weakness, then what happens is when we do achieve well, our brothers can celebrate with us because they know how much we've really achieved. It's not just, oh yeah, he's done well. There becomes a real sense in, wow, that's an incredible accomplishment. And that's where our affirmation can come from each other, and that reflects the affirmation of the Father to the Son. So yeah, that the need to be known in the high parts of our lives, but also in the low parts of our lives, that which is going great, but that's most challenging, then we become true brothers to one another. I certainly know for myself, without a sense of a small group of men and regular ongoing fellowship, I just wouldn't survive. I wouldn't survive the journey of manhood.
A friend of mine, Matt Fradd, defines accountability as giving permission to someone to remind you of who you really want to be. So as men who want to live with sexual integrity, who are striving to be all God created us to be, then accountability is essential. As it says in Proverbs, as iron sharpens iron, so a person sharpens another.
Accountability is, it's your safety net. It's the thing that spurs you on to greatness. It's not something to fear, I don't think. I think it's something to be grateful for.
I like that safety net. I thought that was good.
It's good.
I like that.
It's good.
Accountability. It's my. I guess it's my saving grace.
Yeah, accountability for me is what actually keeps me honest. It's very easy for me to justify thoughts and actions and choices to myself because I know the situation and I know what's going on. But accountability for me is just raw honesty where you can't hide anything because a mate calls you out on what things look like from their perspective, which is probably how things look from everybody else's perspective, which is probably how things actually are. So
I've got 5 guys that I share with all the time. If daily I'll share my emotions and explain where I'm at, because it's not just the struggle, it's the emotions that lead to, I go to that struggle because of my emotion. So I've got accountability software on all my devices. So everything in the home and certain blocks. And a report gets sent to my accountability partners if I'm viewing stuff that I shouldn't be.
Accountability looks like this. You go up to a person that you trust, a person that understands you, and you say, hey mate, I've been struggling in these certain areas. Let's say it's porn. Well, I'd really like you to keep a check on me. I'd really like you to keep me accountable. I want you to ask me tough questions, particularly if you suspect I'm struggling. I give you permission to check in on me. In fact, I want you to check in on me on regular intervals. And you mentioned the word accountability there. That flows out of authentic relationship, Yeah.
Look, I got to tell the honest truth to someone. Look, God bless people that can really self-monitor and that they're mature. I need to be able to tell someone I'm struggling. I can't do this on my own. And God puts these people in my life. I am sure of that. Also, too, the guys I work with come from, my story is I came from that childhood trauma. Then I found addiction. So any relationships I had as a young man, I largely burnt. So when I got to recovery, I met men that were also in that situation, and we started to get honest with each other to save our lives. And one of the sayings I've got with sex-addicted men is, well, you've got to get honest fast. not about what you're going to do to act out, but about what's happening inside of you. And that's, I'm prone in the morning for long walks and before I start my day, and it's where I do my accountability calls, and I ring out to folks, and they're guys I ring nearly every day, and they ring me, and there's a bunch of us. We know we can catch each other, and just to be honest with someone else was something never happened in my family.
And I'd say it's not just about what we do. Above all, I know certainly the accountability calls that I've been loving over these years is it daily, it brings me back in touch with my heart. It brings me back in touch with the feeling world that for many men they struggle with, they haven't got words for. We can learn words for that. And about what it is to be able to sit with our sadness, with our anger, with our fear, with our sense of shame or guilt, but also with our sense of joy.
Can you make a comment about how we sharpen each other as brothers or someone?
We sharpen each other in several ways. First of all, we apply mercy to the place, as brothers, we apply mercy to the places where our brother doesn't know how to apply mercy. And we instruct him on the way of forgiveness and letting go. But the other way in which we also sharpen each other is we do call each other to task around those decisions that we've made, the visions we've got, the goals we've set, when we turn around and we fail to actually step into those things. So in other words, we turn around and we are lovingly but firmly, we turn around and say, no, I'm not going to let you go on this. I'm not going to let second best be where you live your life. You are worthy of the best. I'm going to call you forth in that with lots of grace and lots of mercy on the way.
I'm here at Boggo Road Jail, perhaps the most notorious and brutal of all Australian prisons. Here, there were executions, rapes, murders, and escapes. In fact, I'm standing outside the door of the most famous of all Boggo Road Jail prisoners. His name was Slim Halliday, and he was referred to as the Houdini of Boggo Road. Not only did Slim break out of this particular cell block twice, but on over a dozen occasions he attempted to escape. On one particular occasion, Slim took his prison-issued grey blanket. He tore it into 3 strips, he plaited it, he urinated on it to wet it, and then while fixing it to an anchor point in his room, he looped it around the steel door. By using a piece of wood, he created a Spanish windlass and bent the base of that steel door enough for him to actually climb out underneath it. Just over here, we can actually see where another prisoner has copied this exact same technique, and the strength of that 3-stranded cord was strong enough to bend the steel bars. I'm reminded of the scripture from Ecclesiastes, which says, "Though one may be overpowered, 2 can defend themselves, and a 3-stranded cord is not quickly broken." As a man who's journeyed with a number of men, time and time again, I've seen men taken out because they've tried to do life alone. We can't do it alone. When the stress comes, when the strain comes, when we're put under temptation, we need our brothers to help strengthen us so that we can resist and we can stand strong. Accountability is not just about reaching out after your failure. In fact, it is at its best when we reach out before we fall. Just this morning, I had one of my mates ring me at 6:30 a.m. We get on the phone and we start chatting, and he says, "Paul, I'm really struggling. I'm really busy at work. I'm feeling extremely anxious. And last night, well, to be honest, my wife rejected me." Now, this person a few years ago might have fallen into an unhealthy habit. He might have gone to porn or masturbation or perhaps had a drink. But in that moment, he was able to break the cycle. I affirmed him, I encouraged him, I congratulated him, and I prayed for him, and he prayed for me. And you know what? That's what it's all about.
Yeah, and in brotherhood, you give the guys that you're journeying with, your journeymen, your companions, permission. And in giving them permission, they can call you on it. So they can pick the phone up and go, I saw you at the party the other night. We were there. Like you said, you were going to stay on 2.5 beers and you were 7 or 8. And it's just not good enough. It's not good enough. What are you doing, my friend?
And it's risky, to give someone permission, but you're right, it's key. It's risky, it's vulnerable, and it's as iron sharpens iron. It's saying, hey, I let you sharpen me. There can be barriers to accountability for some people. I've heard people say, I don't need to be accountable to someone because I'm accountable to God. Yes, you are. But God's word makes it really, really clear, time and time again. We need to share deeply and honestly with others. And we need to be accountable to those with whom we're in community with. The second thing I've heard is that we need to be accountable to our spouse. Yes, you are. But let me make it really, really clear. No man who is struggling in the area of sexual purity should have or can have as his primary accountability partner his spouse. God made men and women very, very different, and we need to be respectful of that. For a lot of women, it can be a very traumatic experience for them to hear of the struggles of their husband. Dr. Ted Roberts speaks of how women, when they hear of a husband's unfaithfulness, can actually be left with the psychological profile of a sex abuse victim. In fact, many experts who have worked with men who have shared the full gamut of their porn use recognise that wives often have the clinical markers of post-traumatic stress syndrome. Now again, let's make it really, really clear. Your wife does deserve the truth. She deserves an honest and open relationship. But we need to be very careful. We need to be timely, it needs to be discerning, and often any disclosure needs to be pastorally guided.
I think their heart gets broken, and I think that's a problem because I think a man who is coming to confess something to his wife is usually doing it because he wants to be honest. He wants to be honest about the struggle and he wants to be received in that struggle. And there would be a high proportion of women who just can't do that. They're so hurt by the fact that he is going elsewhere for what he should be receiving in her that they immediately feel that betrayal, they feel disappointment, lack of trust, and disgust or disappointment in their husbands, boyfriends, whatever is going on. I would say be aware of that and be careful of how much you share straight up. I think it's an admirable place to be in. You want to be honest. But there's a way of doing that and introducing that carefully, because if you just come out of the blue and say this to your wife, immediately you're going to have that emotional response rather than a metered response, if you like. You have to be talking to your brothers about this first. I've had men come and look, if it's in a counselling situation, it's different. It's in context, and I'm there for a purpose, and I'm very respectful of that. But if I've had men just come out of the blue for no reason and just dump, where they are sexually and all their sexual problems, immediately there's this thing in a woman that just goes, whoa, and you begin to withdraw because it's unsafe, it's inappropriate, and why are you telling me this? Do you want something sexual? Like, why are you dumping all this on me? So you'll probably get a fear response from a woman that you aren't in relationship with. A woman you're in relationship with, you get, what's wrong with me? And now I'm angry. And what's wrong with you? And I thought I was married to a man with integrity. That sort of thing. You get a mixture of emotions all coming out. So you've got to be careful and metered about your response. Talk to your brothers first, get it out of your system and introduce it gently,
Now again, let us be really, really clear. Our wives do deserve the full truth and they do deserve full honesty. But this needs to be handled really cautiously. It needs to be timely, it needs to be discerned, and it needs to be pastorally guided.
As men, it's important to learn to talk. We're not meant to suffer in silence. The old movies of the past, they're just that, movies, characters, cartoons, caricatures of, they're not real men. We needed to learn as boys it was okay to share our hearts and to talk about what's on our mind and to have all of the feelings. When I hold my son, I want him to feel his father's heart. We will have to come up against the stigma of those guys that aren't ready to talk yet. They're not going to go away. I think we have the right to privacy, and I don't think we have to bare our hearts everywhere to everybody. That's not talking. But to be able to teach our sons and to have the ability to let someone know when you're not coping, to talk about something that's hurting you, so we don't hurt ourselves or others, is what's going to change us as human beings. And I think it's going to change the way families develop, and it'll change the way that we walk on this planet.
Anyone who has any kind of struggle with digital porn use can benefit from accountability software. The way accountability software works is that it basically tracks your use and it sends a report to your accountability partner, either daily or weekly, that flags any suspicious use. Now, the research is really clear. Accountability software actually works better than blocking software. This is because it leads to honesty and it leads to relationship. Remember, honesty and relationships are key. It's also important to use the inbuilt filtering and parental controls on our devices. I had this one particular guy come up to me after church one Sunday. He was telling me about his struggles, and I said, "Do you mind if I just have a look at your phone for a moment?" I changed the settings, I changed the parental controls, I blocked one particular app, and I had the password for these particular restrictions. That was the last time that person has ever looked at porn on their phone. It's not that that was the only thing going on in their life to help them with their porn habit, but sometimes we just need that one little extra barrier to stop us from going where we don't want to go. I want to thank you for joining me on this episode of Real Men. We've covered two really important and crucial topics. But I really want to encourage you, particularly if you're struggling at the moment. I want to encourage you to have hope. In the end, we need to remind ourselves that we are loved by God, we are forgiven by God, and ultimately, we're created for Him. So I look forward to joining you next time. God bless.
A lot of talk in our church today about the new evangelisation, and we might ask, well, what's new about the new evangelisation? One thing that's new is that we're trying to renew the faith in people who should already be Catholic, should already be Christian. Individuals, families, communities, whole cultures that need to rediscover the gospel. And so what's new is that they're getting a new shot in the arm of faith, of evangelisation. Another thing that's new about it is the way that we do that. And the new media and groups like Shalom World TV are very important for bringing the gospel anew to our cultures, to our families, to each of us individually. And so I encourage all the viewers of Shalom World TV, and I encourage Shalom World TV themselves to keep up the good work, to keep watching this channel and to keep up the good work of presenting the Catholic faith to our world today.